I am the writer of the textbooks of Scientology.
The real work here is to put man in a mental condition where he can solve his own problems.
When L. Ron Hubbard wrote Dianetics, he wanted the endorsement of medical doctors and psychiatrists, and he wrote to the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, and said, you should take on Dianetics as the new big thing. They responded saying, you're a quack. He took offense at that. He then determined that they were the enemies of mankind. And so that became the sort of enemy that every Scientologist loves to hate. The Citizens Commission on Human Rights is the arm of Scientology designed to attack psychiatry. It is a full-time, all-out, no-holds-barred assault on psychiatry.
I'm invited to their exhibition, Psychiatry, an Industry of Death. The church wants nothing short of the global obliteration of psychiatry. They say it's a Nazi pseudoscience with blood on its hands.
Psychiatry is a so-called science behind the Holocaust and euthanasia, and that psychiatrists set up the whole euthanasia campaign in the concentration camps. They went into the concentration camps and they set it up and they decided who was going to be killed.
Do you think that Scientology will ever change their views on psychiatry?
No.
No. Absolutely not. That is perhaps the most fundamental doctrine of Scientology, which sets up the us versus them mentality within the bubble of Scientology. That is such an integral part of trying to keep people in Scientology.
Fighting the good fight.
Fighting the good fight against the psychs, that will never change. Nothing that has anything to do with psychiatry is acceptable in Scientology.
The Scientologists don't believe in mental conditions being treated with drugs. They believe they have the answer. And so they will handle this disorder with Scientology auditing, assist, and or vitamins. So they believe that they know what they're doing. The mental health profession should have issue with Scientology promoting itself as the cure for mental illness. It is not a cure. It isn't.
Brandon got involved mainly because of us. From a psychiatry point of view, he had bipolar issues, but we didn't even know that at that time. All we knew is that he was having problems. So even though we had left the church, we were trying to handle it with Scientology.
One thing, in 35 years that stuck with me is I'm still like a little bit worrisome about psychiatrists. So our only solution, even though we were out of it, we used the introspection rundown.
The introspection rundown is a quote breakthrough that L. Ron Hubbard made, where he took one individual who was having a psychotic episode and locked him in a room and kept him without anybody speaking to him for perhaps a week until he stopped screaming and yelling and going crazy. And Hubbard said that I have now found the cure for psychosis.
and it doesn't work.
Okay, so they have this thing called the introspection rundown. They're very aware of your son's mental illness or possibility of it.
Yep.
They say this thing will handle that.
Exactly.
Okay.
In 2012, I was going through a manic episode, and it was an undiagnosed bipolar episode at the time, which later I did get diagnosed by real doctors.
Yeah.
When I experienced a manic episode, you're like hallucinating, right? And you're not sleeping, and it's like almost like a dream world that you're in mentally. And it's just, there's different ideas and thoughts about situations that are distorted than what reality is. I just can't control when it happens, like what's going through my mind and what's coming out of my mouth and what I do. And so the church gave me their solution to that problem, which is called the introspection rundown.
So this introspection rundown, so take me through this.
So I was at the home of two Scientologists, and they're both trained in this process that they're delivering to me.
Yeah.
And so I was there for about 6 weeks, and they were watching me basically for 24 hours around the clock.
What is it? They give you a meal and they don't speak to you? How does it work?
I was locked in a room for 24 hours a day, experiencing craziness in my mind. It was just colors and pictures and hallucinations.
And in this time, you're getting no medical care. What is this solution that Scientology has to make you not have this disorder?
To just let it go, and they claim it'll run out eventually, and then you're fine again. It's hard to explain. I should have been in a psychiatric hospital.
To make a long story short, he came back, I believe, in worse shape than when he went.
Worsens his condition.
Yeah, we got him better with just vitamins and walking and fresh air and, just in loving him and someone being a really good mom.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa McPherson was a devout Scientologist for 15 years. She had been recently reconnecting with old friends and saying that she had doubts and was thinking about coming back home. And shortly after that, she got into a minor fender bender in downtown Clearwater. And by the time the police came and the ambulance, she had stripped off all of her clothes and was walking down the street naked. And a paramedic came up to her and said, "Why are you doing this?" And she said, "Because I need somebody to pay attention to me. I need help." So they took her over to the nearby Morton Plant Hospital, and they checked her in there. Within an hour, 10 Scientologists came to the hospital and talked her into leaving and going back with them against the doctor's wishes. They had to release her. And then Scientology took her back to the Fort Harrison Hotel and locked her in a room for 17 days on Scientology's introspection rundown.
Unfortunately, Scientology's rules also don't include having anybody trained to deal with someone in Lisa's state. They literally grabbed anybody that could be spared. They had no training, they had no idea whatsoever what they were doing, and had no ability to effectively deal with someone in her state.
Every day the caretakers would take logs, and you can see in the logs that her condition is getting worse and worse and worse every day. The last 3 days of her life, those records were destroyed by Scientology. Marty Rathbun confessed to that. He ordered them destroyed.
Well, hang on. David Miscavige ordered those documents to be destroyed through Marty Rathbun, who in fact admitted to destroying them.
Yes.
You ordered those days of logs to be destroyed. Right. Could you explain, why you did that?
To protect the organization. One of them was talking about the witness in the case, pleading with the doctor who was on staff to get Lisa to a doctor. That was like a smoking gun, incriminating in terms of people knowing that she was in a deteriorated physical condition.
This was a huge story.
And then when they came down with the actual charges, when our medical examiner, Joan Wood, came up and found that the cause of death was not natural, was not accident, but it was criminal in nature, then Scientology once again showed its power, showed its capability, so to speak, and they went after Joan Wood.
The fact that Scientology was charged with criminal neglect in the death of Lisa McPherson was of enormous concern to David Miscavige because it was the biggest threat to the tax-exempt status of Scientology. You cannot be engaged in illegal activities. Miscavige spared no expense to challenge the findings of Joan Wood. We, Scientology, hired the foremost criminal pathologists in the world, 3 of them who came and lived in Clearwater. I mean, these were the guys that had just finished the O.J. Simpson trial, to find credible explanations that would place the findings of Joan Wood in doubt.
And they went after Joan Wood and with a vengeance and took her down. And ultimately, she changed the autopsy to cause of death as being an accident. And that gutted the state attorney's, the prosecution state attorney's case, and they had to drop the charges.
It was money to hire people who have great influence. It was David Miscavige personally contacting Joan Wood's lawyer to persuade Joan Wood that she had no choice but to change her testimony based on the information that was coming forward from these medical examiners.
She was really sweet, but intense. I mean, those are the 2 words that best describe her. Taylor was going through a lot of emotional stress, and she had felt like she was bullied. She seemed sad and upset, and she was having all these problems. She tried to go the normal routes, and nothing was working, and she wanted it to be fixed. She was posting everything that she possibly could because she was done. She was really thin. She was posting pictures of her at like 95 pounds. Where she was having these emotional breakdowns and she was so stressed out. Taylor had suffered from suicidal thoughts, and she had tried to commit suicide several times throughout her life. She actually wanted to die. She thought it was a solution to stop all of her problems that she'd been having her entire life, and she was done with. She was just continuing to be offered auditing, essentially, which made her worse. She'd never gotten to see a regular doctor, but she'd gotten to see homeopathic people and tried to handle her symptoms with vitamins and those types of regimens.
Yeah, Scientology.
Scientology's thing is versus medication, because in Scientology, no, it's not an answer. It's not an option. You got to do your auditing and take your vitamins and exercise, because you think psychiatry and psychology, they're all crazy. They're just going over and lobotomizing people and shoving Ritalin and stuff down kids' throats.
Anything that was troubling Taylor will only be addressed by Scientologists with Scientology.
My friend asked, and you did all the processing and didn't feel any better? Taylor says worse. Suicidal again, and literally diagnosed with bipolar 1 by naturopathic doctors, the kind that don't medicate. They had me buy supplements, and I'm doing lab tests on Tuesday.
And ultimately, you'd get kicked out of the church if you said, I want to go see a real doctor, or I want to go see a psychoanalyst or a therapist or a psychiatrist. I want to be put on medication. They'd say, you're out. And you would lose everything you've ever known.
It's the Antichrist.
And you're
it's
you're
the worst
evil
thing you
to
could
the
do.
Church of Scientology, and that's it. And then everybody you have ever known leaves your life.
And then January came around, and we found out that she killed herself. And we found out she shot herself. She took her own life. She had nowhere to go to get real help. So I wanted to try to give her support, but I was scared.
Well, you didn't want to reach out to her because,
No.
like most
Wasn't
Scientologists,
very
and I'm
comfortable.
including myself in that, thinks what I can't do is show her any public support because then my church is going to come after me. That was your frame of mind.
Essentially. And so it was that fear, and I let that fear control me.
Right.
I wish I hadn't. I didn't do what I could, so...
But Lauren, in the frame of mind of a Scientologist, you believed that there was nothing you can do. It's amazing that you did this.
Oh, thank you. I see her. She's here, but
Right.
they reminded completely that she's not, and that she could have been. She could have been so easily helped. I've known 5 people in my life who have killed themselves. 4 of them were Scientologists, including Taylor. And so, who are these people? And how can we do the same thing with Taylor for them?
I'm Elizabeth Gale, and I was born into Scientology, and I left the church in 2007. You just kind of spin out of control. Then you feel even more alone, right? You know? And like, I actually tried to commit suicide when I was 14.
If you are suicidal in the Church of Scientology, you actually get in trouble for those feelings. So you're going to suppress that and hide those feelings if you want to remain in Scientology. Right. So there's a lot of things that add to people being suicidal in Scientology or depressed in Scientology, but they learn very early on to suppress those feelings.
So much pressure all the time. And you're told that the outcome is going to be this, you're going to be happy. You're going to be happy, you're going to be perfect in a way. And I just never felt that way.
There's only so many things you can do in Scientology that are like, will get you out of where you are. And attempting suicide is one of them, you know?
So after the attempt, I spent some time in the hospital. My mom was there the whole time. She never left. She wanted to make really sure that I didn't get into the hands of psychiatrists, the horrible psychiatric mental health system. Which pisses me off now, because I could have used that. She was a CCHR spokeswoman.
CCHR is the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. It is hardly surprising that a spokesperson for the Citizens Commission on Human Rights would be so infused with this hatred towards psychiatry.
Your brother did write, I guess, his ex-girlfriend, talking about he never really fully recovered from the pain of losing your father.
Yeah.
And in this, he mentioned something about maybe I should have asked for help outside of Scientology.
I know that my brother Phil went to the 15th floor of the Green Building in Boston, which is on the university campus, and he wrote the mathematical equation for his body weight times the velocity times the distance he would fall.
"19-year-old Philip Gale jumped off a building. Plosky was inside watching TV and heard a crash."
What is this?
A copy of his suicide note.
Yeah. Even here, he's protecting his family. Even here, he thinks he has f***ed up thinking. And he was questioning things. He was questioning his ideas, and he was never able to deal with the pain of losing his dad. He was never able to deal with his depression. He was never able to deal with that. And so this says everything that someone feels when they question what they were forced to believe, that they are bad, and that it was him who was f***ed up.
For him to jump out of that window when everything seems like it could have been avoided, you know? Like, you don't have to do any of this anymore. You don't have to do it. But we aren't told that growing up. We aren't told that there's another way to live. We are told that if you reject Scientology, you will lose. If Scientology worked, then I wouldn't be here. Because we had 3 generations of healthy, smart, capable people applying Scientology to the best of their ability. And it ended up in death, in suicide, in loss.
I am on post. Dora R comes up to my desk.
Who's that?
The Director of Inspections and Reports. And so she says, the security chief from OSA Int wants to speak to you at the HI. And I instantly knew, what did Aaron do? I knew it was bad, but I didn't want to believe it, and I couldn't even think. I walked into the parking lot, and the security chief from OSA Int comes up and says, Aaron hung himself last night. And that was it. And I said, did he die? And she said, yeah. And I stood there, screaming and crying, alone. And they all walked away from me, and there was no consolation.
Scientology promises people that it has the answers to everything. All of life, every part of your existence can be analyzed, resolved, and made better by Scientology. And clearly the ultimate failure of that is when someone commits suicide.
Right.